Tim, here we are again.
Episode 3.
I tell you what, I'm going to put it to you that 2 weeks goes very, very fast.
It does, doesn't it? It feels like it's every night we're doing this.
I know. I have nightmares about it. No, just dreams. Good dreams.
It does go quick.
Yeah, it does. So, what are we going to talk about tonight, Tim?
Well, we actually got another listener question.
I can't believe it. This is. I'll tell you what. Very soon, I'm just going to think they're not real.
Well, they are real because they're coming in.
Oh, look, I'm happy about that.
We need more, so just one again, but one's enough. It seems to get us through.
Well, we do tend to talk a fair bit about that sort of stuff. So,
good topic.
Why don't we start? What's the question?
So basically, the question is, I'll paraphrase a little bit: is my friend's looking at purchasing a house? What due diligence should she do before she puts in an offer or before she buys the house? So, great question.
Another great question. And first of all, can I just say that they're intelligent because they're actually going to buy a home. So that's a great start.
That's a good sign.
That's the first part of the diligence.
So we thought what we'd work through tonight is we've chosen probably 6 or 7 or 8 maybe things that we think are important, and we thought we might run through them. You've contributed a few. I'll come up with a few. Okay. And we'll go through them. So maybe you start, Mark. What's the first one?
I suppose the first thing that I would think of is something that we do probably continuously, whether it be for sales or rental.
Yep.
For us to come up with a price, we don't pluck it out of mid-air. So I think that that's something that realistically this lady should do is so that she's armed with as much information so that she knows when she has the right property to go forward, she should be checking what other comparable properties there are.
I would agree. So my advice to her would be to make sure that when we say comparables, they are comparable. So similar size bedroom, similar size block. And the really good thing is if it's in town, like in Ballarat or most big cities, there's going to be a lot of comparables.
That's right.
And now you can just jump on realestate.com, click the sold section, scroll through. You can even set your parameters. So if the house is 340, you might go between 3 and 350.
Yeah, so you're not.
See what's in there.
There's no point in looking at things that are way outside.
No.
It probably gets a little bit harder with properties in the country, and you've had to do a lot of that. So
yeah,
is there anything special about that?
Well, sometimes what it means is, say if you're looking at a house in Spires Creek, you might have to then compare it to Haddon or Smarsdale or Scarsdale and then try and make an adjustment for the location difference.
But in general, you would make sure it's the same side of town from Ballarat, for instance. You wouldn't pick something on the other side.
No, well, you can't compare it to Invermay. It's too hard. So because there's too much price difference in terms of location. So,
and I think that's a really good thing. I know even myself, after purchasing plenty of homes, when we decided to move back, we probably we would have been looking around for a good 2 months just before we actually got serious about anything. And then when we saw the right properties, and I think we bought 2, we actually bought 2 in a week, would you believe, when we came back. And it was because we knew exactly that our value space was right.
Well, it's good. It gives you confidence to put in an offer, and it means you can act fast. So that's really important.
Well, and it's still a fairly hot market in Ballarat. So if you haven't got your groundwork done, you can miss out while you're thinking about it, can't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a great one. It's a good start.
The next on the list, essentially, I think really important, and a lot of people get, not everyone, but is make your offer subject to a building and pest inspection.
It's becoming fairly normal now, isn't it? You really do have to protect yourself.
And normally that will be done within, so you'll sign a contract, get your building and pest inspection done within that sort of first 7 days. Make sure it's all okay. So there's plenty of licensed people in Ballarat who can do those checks.
Absolutely.
Most agents will often give you a recommendation if you don't know anyone or do your own research. So what they'll do, Mark, is they'll go out, inspect the property. They'll normally give you a verbal report and then they'll give you a written report the next day. And they are super thorough and they will pick up every single possible thing.
And there isn't a house that they don't pick up things, is there? Everyone
Even
does.
A brand new house will have a lot of things.
Yeah. But that sort of brings to the other part of that equation, and back in sales, I can recall some people who have actually not understood what a build and pest inspection really is.
Yes.
So what they're looking at, they go, oh, there's that wrong and there's that wrong, and they're all little things. That's not what you're looking for in a build and pest inspection, is it?
You're looking for major, and most wordings in the contract under that clause will be major building.
They often use structural, don't they?
That's the word I was looking for. Sorry, Mark. Yeah, so major structural defect.
Yeah.
So that's, big issues with the floor, the roof's going to fall in, those sorts of things.
And
it's not like whether there's a bit of paint off somewhere, or
that's right.
door's 1 millimetre off square.
Because as we've said, there will be faults with houses, and that report will bring up everything. But it's to catch the big things. It might be rising dam. It might be that something is being built out of code which needs to be fixed.
Yeah, make sure things have got permits.
That's right. It'll be all those type of things.
All those sorts of things. So that's a pretty common one, and it's just a good peace of mind. And
look, no agent minds, and I think this is really important, because sometimes they think that we're really bullish about what they're doing. No agent minds you doing your due diligence. No agent has an issue with you doing things properly. But I would put it out there that it's better to make the offer, get the property, and put the due diligence in, because otherwise if you do it the other way around, I know some people would want to do the reports.
Well, it's,
and then they can miss out on the property, and they've actually paid for something that's not then useful for them because it's not on that property anymore.
So everyone's different and people have their own preferences, but I agree with you. With an auction, obviously you can't do that, but negotiate, make sure you've secured the property before you go around and spend some money.
I think that's another very good one though. We should mention about an auction. All your due diligence needs to be done before you're at the auction.
Before the day.
Because you don't have that opportunity. You can't put that clause in, can you?
It's unconditional. That's a whole other topic, probably auctions.
It probably is. We can go back to it, but just to stick with tonight's one, what that would mean is if you're really interested, you should be getting the agent to allow somebody to come and do an inspection prior to that auction. So that week before, so that you're ready, so that you can put your hand up and you can buy that property knowing that you've actually done your due diligence.
And if there is something wrong, then at the auction you can make an adjustment of what you bid based on that.
Correct. And that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? What else should you do, Tim?
I think another one, and this one's maybe a little bit sneaky that probably not many people do, is I always suggest to people is to go speak to the neighbours. So, especially the direct neighbours, either side, go knock on their door. Hi, my name's Tim. I'm just interested in the property next door. I just want to introduce myself, see if there's anything that you think I should be aware of. And from your perspective, you get to meet the neighbours.
Look, that's really, really great, because if you find that you've got somebody that you knock on their door and it's not going to be a good happening thing.
Well, you open the door and 6 dogs run out barking like mad at you, and you go, well, do I want to have this?
You've got to get a fair idea, aren't you? And I think the other thing that's really interesting, people tend to tell you really straight about the good things and the bad things.
They do.
Because if they love it, they'll be saying, oh, you'd love it here. It's fantastic. We've got Jane down the road. We've got Bill across around the corner. They're great people. What sort of things are you into? Do you have kids? And you'll get a real good basis, but they'll also tell you, look, there's not too much problem in this block, but probably 3 blocks over. If you're looking at that, don't look in there because that's not such a good area. It's fantastic. It's a really good one. I like that.
So it's a bit sneaky, but it's a really good one. This is another really good one that's also maybe a bit sneaky, is sometimes real estate agents might schedule an open time or an inspection time to suit maybe the traffic in the area or the train that goes by. So it's always good to visit the property at different times of the day. So go back at 6 o'clock at night, go back at school times, check it out on the weekends, all those things, and just see if there's anything that happens.
And even sometimes it's the other way around. Like you might be opposite a school, and when it's been open, you think, oh, where am I ever going to get a park? I'm never going to get a park. But if you come back at 6:30 at night when you're probably coming home,
normally,
so it works both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's a really good one.
Yeah, so try and go there at times when you'll be there, and as you said, those sorts of things. Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. So, see, I tell you what. They're not difficult things, are they?
No.
But they're things that will change your perspective of that property. And it will either bring you more aligned to buying or to renting even, or less aligned.
And one thing you touched on there, Mark, is schools. You said about schools.
Yeah.
So
that is an important one.
Well, and the school zoning in Ballarat has all just changed, the high school zoning, which some people may not be aware of.
Yeah, and there's a couple of areas that principally the real estate sells because of the zone. So that movement of just even a few blocks can be quite drastic, can't it?
So there's a really good website. I'm sure if you Google it, or if someone wants to know, just put in the comments or get in touch, we can provide a link to the zonings. But it has all changed, because the last thing you want to do is buy a house so that your 2 kids can go to Ballarat High School, find out the zoning's moved, then go in a different school, which...
They're actually going out to Mount Clear.
Yeah, and there's always a line somewhere, so it could have been if I had bought
and they
two
don't,
doors down.
The other interesting thing about that is they don't always make sense. Because sometimes you would think, well, how in the heck, why am I zoned to that school?
Yes.
And
I'm not really
always
near there.
easy.
Yeah, it's not
always easy.
It's not the closest school you to is the one that you're zoned to. So it really pays.
And they're general living things, aren't they? And to make sure that there are things that if your mobility's not great, where's the bus route?
Yeah. So I had that on my list. Yep. Public transport.
Yep. That's a really strong thing to look forward.
Yeah, and the schools too, to finish off, is that can actually have a big effect of the resale value too.
It can actually really change it. And there's been cases in Melbourne where it's changed it by hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So probably not so much here, but it still is there. Ballarat High School, which you mentioned before, is a particularly sought after school, for instance. So it's going to be worth more if it's just within than if it's just out.
We spoke about coming to the property at different times. The other thing that's really important is drive around the local area. Drive around, within, I don't know, 5K, probably not 5K, it's a bit far in Ballarat, but within a couple of K and just assess the whole area.
See what you've got.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, because you might have a really nice street and then, behind you find out it's not as exciting as what you might have hoped for.
Yes, that's a good word too. I like that. Exciting. So well, at least you won't be excited once you've moved in.
So go through all those things and find that out.
Yeah, look, there's a little bit about that. If it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true factor, isn't there? Yeah. So if you're wondering why you think this is an A-grade area and there's not a premium on it, there will be a reason, but it may be a reason that you can live with, and it may be a reason that you don't care about, but at least find out.
I always have this philosophy, it might sound a bit strange, Mark, but when you purchase a property, you're either smarter than everyone else or stupider than everyone else, because you're paying more than everyone else. So you're either much smarter than everyone else, or you're...
That's true, Tim. That's
but
very
there has
true.
to be a point somewhere.
But you know what? Probably if you buy a lot of houses over time, you'll be both.
You'll work it out. And I think if you do, we've got a few more to cover, but some of these things, then at least you can buy with confidence, and you'll have missed all the major ones.
Yeah, and I think too, I often hear a conversation, oh, why did you buy there? Because it's such and such. Yeah. But if that doesn't matter to that person, then there's no reason they couldn't buy there. So it's not everybody has the same list of things they're checking
Horses
for.
If you don't
have school-aged children, for instance, you probably don't want to pay a premium for a school zone that you're not going to use.
But it's sometimes important, I understand that, Mark, to keep that in mind, because when you're 25 and you don't have kids, you buy this house, and I mean the reality is you're probably not going to still be there in 15 years.
No, probably
when your kids are going to school, but maybe they are. So it's worth at least knowing that, okay, well, should I end up getting married and have kids or whatever,
that's where it's
I'm
going to
in
be.
the right zone.
And probably when you think that most people seem to, on average, I think it's 10 years in a house. Yeah. So 10 years, you've got a bit of time there. You're going to be definitely different at the end of that 10 years.
Yeah, well, and that leads me into the next thing that's always just worth a quick conversation is rental potential in that area.
Absolutely.
What sort of return you're going to get, how quick it's going to rent, what sort of properties. Because again, when you're 25 and then you do get married or you have kids or whatever, and you're 30 and you need to upsize, you go, well, I want to keep this property. Well, can we rent it?
But if there's no decent rent return there, and I think that there's probably another little one there just on the side of that, is that sometimes you'll buy a property for capital value gain, and sometimes you'll buy it for a return. Yeah. And that means you're going to be looking at different things, and that list is going to be slightly different. If you're looking for capital gains and you're not likely to rent it in a while, you might be happy in an area that might be getting 3% return. Yeah. But if you're thinking that I'm only going to be here for 2 years and I'm going to want to rent it, you probably need to look at somewhere that'll get yourself a 5% return. And
we often find that with purchases too, Mark. Like if you've got an investor and there's a house, and it's just a numbers game normally. So they go,
absolutely,
I can't pay any more because then my return's not good enough.
That's right.
Where if you've got someone who's planning on moving in, first home buyers living there for a lot of time, then they go, well, I really like it. Let's pay an extra 5, 10, whatever we need to secure it. And when we sell it way down the track, we probably won't even remember what we paid for it.
The interesting thing is those sort of homes tend to have the capital gain, and they won't remember whether they've paid a little bit too much by the time they're selling it. Yeah. If it's an investor, that market usually is a bit more stable, and they probably will know because their return's going to be down the whole time.
And I mean, I'm sitting here as a sales consultant, but I say to my friends and family when they ring me about houses, I go, well, you know, I think it's probably roughly worth this.
Yes.
But if you really like it and you want to buy it, just pay what you need to pay to buy it. As long as you're not doing something ridiculous.
I think that's really a great piece of advice, because at the end of the day, if we use that same average in there for 10 years, you much more prefer to be in a house that you paid a little bit more for 10 years that you've enjoyed, than going, oh gee, I wish I had bought the 1-2 streets over.
Yeah, and I think I think back to, I'm not that old, but the properties I purchased, and they seemed really expensive at the time. And then I look at what they're worth now, and I go, well, what was I worried about? I should have bought. Yeah. And who knows what the property market's going to do? So
look, you never do, but I think if you follow some of these guides, and it comes back to being informed, you can. People think that they might be a first-time purchaser or investor, or even first time in the rental market, because a lot of these things work in the rental market as well. The fact of the matter is they don't have to be first time and uninformed.
Yes,
there's
correct.
a big difference.
Correct. And there's so much research you can do online.
We're living in the age, aren't we?
We've got lists of things we can give to buyers, of things they should check out. The next one too, which is probably a whole nother segment, so we won't go too deep, is obviously make sure you've got your finance worked out, be it with your broker, bank, and we'll do an episode on that.
I think that would be really good. It'd be nice to get somebody, maybe one of the brokers that we've got here.
We'll get a mortgage broker in to have a conversation. Because
there are certain things, and if you're not ready, and sometimes you'll get to that point, and it might be something silly that you haven't thought about. It may be that in this day and age with a lot of people, it could even be you have the wrong visa. All of those things have to be sorted out prior to actually purchase. So
that's really important. And then the last one is, which will help you with a whole heap of these due diligence things, is have a really good conveyance or solicitor.
Yeah.
And sometimes, again, it's worth doing some research and some homework, and there'd be no conveyancer in Ballarat who wouldn't have a conversation with you about before you purchase. So get someone that you know, like and trust, have a conversation with them, and then when you get to a property, you've got someone lined up and you're not going in cold. And
I'd probably go even a step further, and that is talk to all of these people. It goes right back to where we've talked about building and pest.
Yeah, strike up a conversation with them.
There's a really simple question. Okay, all of these things are wrong with it.
Yeah.
What's going to be a problem in 5 years? What's going to be a problem in 10 years? And all of a sudden, it's a different issue. And if it is a major problem, don't just go, oh, I'm really scared. Have the conversation. Have the conversation with the real estate. They can go back to a vendor and say, look, you probably weren't even aware, but there's a major or structural issue. Yeah. The people are actually still keen on the price, on the house, but probably now, if to go forward, there'll have to be something. Yeah, and that can happen, but if you don't talk about it, sometimes it won't be. But the whole idea is to have the communication, have the conversation, and you're paying for these people, use them.
Or ring them up now and say, I'm just starting to look around in Ballarat. When do I get you involved? What do you charge? It's good to know what people charge. What do you provide? And make sure you go right. So I've got a building inspector sorted out. I've got a mortgage broker ready. I've got my solicitor ready. Build up this group of people.
Absolutely, and that you're comfortable with. Because certainly in our industry anyway, I don't think a lot of people out there realise how much we do, which is not costed, that we don't have a fee for. We're just doing so it's general information for the purchaser.
I don't think we get paid for the podcast yet, do we?
We'll probably never get paid for the podcast. So. But I think it is true. I think if you're not too scared to ask, you'll have plenty of information about most things.
Yeah, you'll be fine. And as an agent, we actually really like it when people are organised and they ask questions and they do all these things.
We don't pretend to know it all. So sometimes in these podcasts, you'll say to us, "Look, we're not an expert in that area. However, we'll go and get somebody to talk to, or we'll go and ask the question on their behalf and come back. Well, I've gone to a conveyancer and they've said to me that this happens. There's one that I remember this, and people don't do this as much. There's one other little one that I always think is quite funny. Measuring the block.
Yeah, so that's something that is quite interesting, especially on acreage properties. But a lot of conveyancers still suggest that you go out and measure your block, but it sort of opens a bit of a can of worms.
It does.
Because where do you measure from, and what if the fence is in the wrong spot, and all those sorts of things.
That's a big one. There's a property. My first property I bought was in South Street. Nice property. I'd like to still have it, but I don't have it anymore. Only a little miners cottage. So I went along and measured the block, and I looked at the map because it was my first thing. I was only 17, so I mean that was a lot of years ago.
Wow.
And so all the measurements seemed to be right. So in other words, the frontage was right, the length was right, the other one was right. I found out 3 years later when somebody else purchased next to me that every block was a metre off.
Oh, really?
So the whole street. Now, there's not a lot you can do from that without, if you don't know where the surveyor point is. So I suppose with that, don't be pedantic about it. Just look to see. You might find that there's a chunk that's missing.
If it's advertised as 700 square metres and you measure it rough when it comes out at 5, then delve a bit deeper because you might have an issue.
Well, there is this thing that not a lot of people know about, and we're not experts in this area, but there are certain circumstances, if there's no usage and you haven't checked it, that you actually might lose that land altogether.
Yeah.
Shared driveways in Ballarat is one which has caused grief in the past. I've always said to people, if you don't have a car, make sure you use it, walk down, have some proof that you're actually utilising it.
And they're good questions that you ask your solicitor. So solicitor's going to, or conveyancer's going to read over the contract. They're going to check if there's any caveats, what easements are
that's one
on
that
the
we
property.
had mentioned. That's a great one.
And that, I think caveats is something that we probably shouldn't explain maybe. We have an understanding of it, but let's get a solicitor in one night.
I think we will. The only thing I would say about caveats, it means that there is some sort of order on the property that you need to find out.
Correct.
Any more than that, I think, but that would be a great thing because, again, sometimes they're not scary, but you need a professional to tell you exactly how is this going to affect my purchase of this property. And
so your conveyancer solicitor will often also advise about any additional special conditions. Like one we get sometimes is you go to a house and there's no power connected. Yeah. So how can I check that the oven works? So you might get a condition put in that all appliances be in working order, or get the power turned on. Often you can get the power turned on for a couple of days to check these things, because once you've purchased it, if you get a day out from settlement and it doesn't work, it's a whole mess. And again, that's probably a solicitor.
It is a solicitor, and probably I think sometimes there is a bit of an erring on the fact that everybody thinks that they could use that final inspection, but realistically the final inspection's not for that. So you need to have some protection of those sort of things.
So I think I think we've got a lot of questions for a conveyancer solicitor.
I think we probably helped them out, and we probably got the mortgage broker as well. But I think that's the whole thing. Over time, this is really just about general information.
We'll just roll through. So I think we've covered, I don't know how many we got.
It's quite a few, isn't it?
Maybe.
But I don't think any of those individually are difficult.
No, and realistically, most people can get all them done pretty quickly. And with Google and the internet now, and even as agents, sometimes people ask me to provide some evidence of comparable properties, and there's now a statement of information that has to show that, which again is probably a whole nother
It probably topic. Is, but your due diligence is probably at least looking at that.
Yeah, correct.
Because it's a lawful document that we have to provide.
3 properties that have similar.
And if it doesn't have 3, then the agent actually has to prove why there isn't 3.
Yeah, and sometimes that happens where there's just not 3 comparables, and then you have to expand your search a little bit more.
But that probably goes back to your first point when we were talking about checking your comparables. That will be the time when you're not going to find them in right in 100 metres or even a kilometre. You might have to go 10k.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So I think that's pretty good tonight.
I think, look, we don't want to confuse everybody by going over things too much. So these are just short and sharp. Hope you're liking them. We'd love some more feedback, more questions.
Absolutely.
Questions are great. We've got 2.
Yeah, we've got 2. We need another one for next time.
I really would like another question because it makes our job easier, because then we know that we're actually focusing on the things that people
want to hear about.
Yeah. Because surely you're not going to listen to this podcast just for your voice and my voice.
That is for sure.
And that's probably a good place for us to leave it.
Not a problem. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's been fun again, and thank you for those people who watch and
listen.
And that's right, most of them are probably listening at the moment, because we haven't. The video's not on every platform.
We're working
maybe
on
not
it.
a bad thing.
We're working on it, so things to come. But we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll see you again.
Bye.
Bye.